everyone, this is Sarah with the York County Library. Welcome to another Stay Creative York County video. In today's video, I will be showing you how to make a upcycled painted jar. And you can see I have a little window here, and this is something that you can personalize. You don't have to do the heart necessarily. So to be able to do this project, first thing you're going to need is a glass jar or glass container. This one right here is a Smucker's jar that I emptied and cleaned out. So I'm going to be reusing that. The first thing we're going to be doing is cleaning it off. Make sure there's no oils on there that can interact with the paint. So for that I'm going to be using a little bit of rubbing alcohol and some cotton pads. Then for making the design on the front, I'm going to be using some painter's tape. I'm going to be layering it down, overlapping, until I get it to the width that I want my design. And then on top of the painter's tape, I'm going to be using a pencil to draw my design and an X-Acto knife to cut it out. Then once it's on there, we're going to start painting. Now I started out using a sponge tipped brush for this, but I ended up switching to a bristle brush. This actually ended up being better for me in the long run. I'm going to be using acrylic paint. This is Craft Smart acrylic paint that I got from Michael's. And this one little tube was enough for me to do the jar. We're going to be doing several coats of it. I did about 4 for this. Depending on the quality of your paint, you may need more or less. And just, you want to get it to the opacity that you want your specific jar to be. So once it's on there, we're going to peel it off, and I'm going to do a sealant on this just to protect that paint and keep it from chipping as much as it might if it didn't have the sealant. And I'm going to be using Mod Podge for this. Mod Podge is something that you can find at Walmart, Target, Michael's. Sometimes the dollar store will even have them in small containers. And I think that's it. So think about the design you want and the color you want for your jar, and let's get into the video and see how I took an upcycled jar, or a jar I was going to recycle, and turned it into this. So the first thing we're going to do before we start our project is clean off the surface of the glass using a cotton pad and some rubbing alcohol. This is just to make sure we don't have any grease or dirt on the surface. And I put it down on the bottom and rub the sides, turning it around using my hand on the top. Now to create the heart design, I'm going to be taking some painter's tape, laying some pieces side by side until I get the width that I want for my heart. And I'm going to be using this plastic top. I'm going to be using my pencil to sketch out the design, and then I'm going to cut it out with the X-Acto knife. If you have a cutting mat, this would be the perfect time to use it, but I'm just deciding to put a little bit of marks in the top of this. And now we have our heart. I'm going to use my X-Acto blade to pick up the first piece of tape so that it all comes up in one piece. And then I'm going to place it on my jar where I want it to be, making sure to use my nail to kind of push down the edges so that paint does not seep in. Once I have that in place, I'm going to use this little container I had with some to-go food. I cleaned it out, and I'm going to be using it to put my acrylic paint in. With the top, it'll make sure that the paint doesn't dry out. Then I start applying a coat of paint. I started out with this sponge brush, but it wasn't really working out. It was really hard to get the paint onto it. I had to dab it, and sometimes that took paint off. So I switched to a flat brush with regular bristles. So now I'm just going to apply a layer, let that layer dry, and then apply another layer. For this particular project, it took me 4 layers to get the color that I wanted. Also played around with using different techniques. I would use bigger strokes to lay down the first coats, and then I would use smaller dabs to apply paint in areas where I could still see through. I used my hand in the top of the jar to move it around as I was painting it. And then I later discovered if you have it on a piece of paper, you can also then start to turn the piece of paper if you don't have the dexterity to hold the top of it with your hand. This might be a more comfortable way to paint it. So now I'm going to be using the tip of an X-Acto blade to lift up an edge of the painter's tape under the dried layers of paint. I'm going to slowly peel the paint off so that we can reveal the heart. I'm pulling it off piece by piece as it will go. I'm not rushing it because I don't want to tear off other pieces of paint around the heart. So now I have it off, and there we go. So to make sure that I seal this in and prevent any easy scratches, I'm going to be putting a layer of Mod Podge. You don't have to do this step, and you can use a matte Mod Podge if you don't want it to be glossy. So I'm going to use the same technique by putting my hand in the top, or you could put it on a piece of paper and turn it to apply the coat evenly, and it will dry clear. So once I've touched it up, I can now put it on display. You could use it for storage, or you can put some lights inside. I use a string of battery operated lights and turn it into a nightlight or votive. Okay friends, that's the end of the video. Maybe comment down below how you like to reuse or upcycle things instead of just recycling them or throwing them away. I personally like to use my glass jars for containers, so we have a little pencil jar there. That is a glass jar that I got from my grandma. This right here I use for paint water. And I even have a little walnut container that I use to keep some of my bigger awkward brushes in. So I'm going to leave some resources in the description below for some craft books that specifically focus on recycling or using recycled materials. So if you're interested, check that out. And until next time, friends, remember to stay safe and stay creative, York County.